The main mission for most Democratic voters is finding the candidate with the best chance to beat Donald Trump. But can anyone beat this president? We put that question to just about everyone we came across up here over the past couple of days.
He is, but I don't think as easily as a lot of people think. A lot of people who might not be inclined to like him and might never like him, they kind of like his language. He uses the kind of words that they'd like to use against their boss. There's an unfortunate aspect to the American character. We like vengeance a little. We like it a little. So you can't underestimate that.
I think anyone is beatable if enough people vote. You know, I think that one of the problems that Democrats have is entering a race with a spirit of fear. You have to enter it with the spirit of registering lots and lots of people to vote. It's all a numbers game. And if Democrats register enough voters, and if they register enough voters in the right states and they get them out to vote, any politician is beatable.
I've never seen the Democrats as united as they are in this election to beat the president. That doesn't mean they're united in who they're going to vote for. The overwhelming worry is, can we beat Donald Trump? And a worry that if we don't pick the right person, we the Democrats, we're going to go down to defeat in November. We're going to have another 4 years of President Trump. Democrats don't want that. They clearly want to change.
It's going to be a bloody mess, a political bloody mess. The Democrats are, frankly, don't get along very well with each other. I mean, that's plays out in Congress. AOC is forcing the Speaker of the House to do certain things. So the progressives, if they don't get their candidate, are going to be very feisty. The moderates, if they don't get their candidate, are going to stay home.
The Republican Party has a nominee. We don't. And I think one of the most frustrating parts of this primary experience has been all of the pontification and forecasting before voters have had a chance to vote. Let the voters vote.
If we all come together, we can beat Donald Trump. That means we have to get this whole party together and energized to show up. There are tens of millions more of us.
I'm joined now by a man who knows a thing or two about what it takes to win it all, chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine, Mark Leibovich. Mark, good to see you.
Jim, good to be here.
So the consensus out of that seems to be, can he be beaten? Yeah, maybe. Can he be beaten?
Of course he can be beaten. I mean, there's a lot of hand-wringing, obviously, in Democratic circles since Iowa. One, because Iowa was such a disaster. Two, because there's so much infighting. And look, that's pretty natural. And also, it's pretty extreme. I mean, it's usually not as bad as it has been. Usually Iowa has its act together. Having said all that, I mean, there are these polls out this week that shows pretty much everyone head-to-head pretty strong against Donald Trump.
Let's put those up. That's from Quinnipiac. Yeah, they're all let me tell you the moment I had, Mark, where I started to doubt that it was possible. Right after the Friday Night Massacre, where he obviously fires two Vindemans and a Sunland, I started thinking about the Saturday Night Massacre from almost 50 years ago. There, it changed the world. I would argue after this Friday Night Massacre, not even one mind was changed. Am I overreacting to that or no?
No, but I think it's a longer process. I think it's not about changing minds so much as it is Mitt Romney, of all people, has, I think, created a predicate by which some people in the Republican Party can maybe be reunited with their conscience in a way that, again, it sounds naive to talk about given the recent history, but I think that he has made the lives of people like Susan Collins and Cory Gardner and some vulnerable Republicans running for re-election, and even some retiring ones like Lamar Alexander, made their job a little harder, made their lives a little harder.
So let's talk about them. You talked to Romney. We heard it on the Daily, and you wrote a piece on the day, I think it was earlier in the day, when he decided to do this historic thing. I interviewed Bill Weld last night, who obviously is alone in that contest.
Right.
What separates the Welds and the Romneys from the rest of their fellow Republicans?
Well, I mean, Romney has a job. Romney's been far more relevant to the recent fortunes of the Republican Party than Bill Weld has been. I mean, Bill Weld sort of left elected office over 20 years ago. Look, Weld's run, I think, very niche-y campaign. I think the media likes him. He has a point to make. I think, he's soldiered on. I think he probably will. But Mitt Romney is an important figure in the Senate. He is a standalone Republican brand that you can diminish what it means in the larger scheme of things as far as resistance inside the Republican Party. But it's significant given that he's a significant figure.
Where do you fall on the divide, for lack of a better expression? Who wins let me use Obama's terminology, between the improvers and the revolutionaries? Who wins that?
Inside what party?
Inside the Democratic Party.
Inside the Democratic Party. I think I think the winner has to sort of convince people that he or she is a mixture of both, right? I mean, it sounds like a cop-out of an answer, but it's true. I just don't see moderates getting all that excited about Bernie Sanders. I don't see Bernie's people getting all that excited about, Michael Bloomberg. It's a hard circle to square, but I think it can be done just because you start with such a base of revulsion towards Donald Trump, and whoever can actually do that, I think can have a real shot.
Speaking of revulsion, we discussed this earlier in the show, but my reaction to this Department of Justice overruling its own prosecutors in this Roger Stone case is otherworldly to me. And as I said earlier, all four of the prosecutors left the case. One of them resigned from his job. What's your takeaway from this?
Well, first of all, I mean, you mentioned Black Friday and the Vindeman Yovanovitch firing, or no, Sondland firing.
Yeah, Sondland,
you invoked blacks, the Saturday Night Massacre, and we're sort of running out of days of the week here, right? I mean, this is Tuesday. Maybe it was timed, well, it wasn't timed with the New Hampshire primary, but look, it's easy to assume that this is just going to get lost. I think when people start resigning, it makes a lasting statement, and it also, again, creates an example that others going forward could follow.
Why have we seen so few resignations over issues not unlike this, would you say?
I think, well, first of all, I mean, the Roger Stone case is a fairly public and fairly egregious case, I think, where, I mean, it's very rare that you see, in the course of a few hours, a president tweeting, a Justice Department reversing itself, and 4 prosecutors just, quitting. I mean,
and him saying he has nothing to do with it, by the way, the tweet obviously had nothing to do with it.
Correct, right. I mean, we've seen this, it's just, the cycle is playing out much more fast.
So speaking of Susan Collins, just for a second, lessons learned, and obviously we learned that the lessons that Trump learned were not the ones she said he learned. What is the Republican takeaway from this? I would assume the true conservatives have got to be grossly offended by this sort of interference, even if they're partial to Roger Stone, no?
I honestly would hope so. I would think so. But when you talk, one of the things that Mitt Romney said to me the other day, and it was an incredibly reflective interview, he said at one point, I have seen how much Republicans and Democrats, but Republicans in my case, will do to justify their own comfortable actions politically, even if they know it's wrong. And I think, he was fighting up against that current. But I think that a lot of people hearing that or sort of knowing that position could sort of intuitively know that they're in an uncomfortable position that might have to answer to history at some point.
By the way, I learned more about Mitt Romney in a little interview with you than all the years we had him in Massachusetts. It was great.
Well, that's
Mark,
good to
it's
know.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks
good to be
so
here.
much. Mark Leibovich.